council meeting, and we will start with roll call.
Pritchett.
Here.
Bevins.
Here.
W. Erickson. Here. T. Erickson.
Here.
Lambert.
Here.
Stunek.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
And Bedell.
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us to the next item, number 4, the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
A motion by Bevins, a second by Wayne Erickson to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. Yes. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Notice to public, all matters listed are considered routine by the council and will all be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the council votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion by Pritchett and a second by Stunek to approve the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. Yes. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 6, and that's our council committee reports. We will start with the Safety and Public Works Committee. Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've got 3 items on the agenda this evening. The first item is Improvement 20-01, which is the 2020 Seal Coat Project Final Pay Application. The motion is to approve the final pay application to Asphalt Surface Technology Corporation in the total amount of $149,522.23. Of course, subject to approval of bills and payments to contractors on the P&F agenda, and I so move.
A motion by Bevins, a second by Erickson. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Kelly?
Just that we budget $150,000 every year for seal coating out of Construction Fund 401.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. Yes. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 is the Public Transit Capital and Asset Management Plan. The motion is to accept staff's recommendation, approve the attached Public Transit Capital Asset Management Plan, which was unanimously approved by the Transit Advisory Committee on its October 22nd meeting, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the Capital Asset Management Plan. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
Thank you,
Alderman
Mr.
Bevins.
Chair. And our final item is also a transit issue, and that is to approve the revised maintenance policies and procedures plan as presented that was also unanimously approved by the Transportation Advisory Committee at its October 22nd meeting, and I so move.
Second Lambert.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the Transit Vehicle Maintenance Policy and Procedures Plan. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. Yes. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
End of report.
Thank you, Alderman Bevins. That brings us to 6B, Personnel and Finance Committee. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, we have 8 items on our agenda, and we might actually get to vote on something that's not roll call eventually. It's really cool. I'm psyched for this. All right. Number 1 is the approval of bills and payments to contractors, and I so move.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just real quickly, you might notice that the contract amount, or the amount paid is a little higher than the contract amount. We budget $150,000, and that there was just that difference is cost of materials is a little bit different. So.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. Yes. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
All right. Item number 2 is the police officer hiring ratification. So the motion coming out of committee is to affirm the hiring of police officer Andrew Middleton starting at LELS 2020 Step 1 a rate of $27.43 an hour with a starting date of October 26th, 2020, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This would bring us up to the 22 out of the 27 officers budgeted, starting on October 26th, as it said. So that's about it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, motion carries.
All right, that takes us to item number 3, which is the resignation of firefighter Gobway. And the motion coming out of committee is to accept with regret the letter of resignation from firefighter Gobway effective 10/31/2020, and I so move.
And I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
All right, item number 4 is acknowledge the hiring of Jesse Sanders as park maintenance employee. And the motion coming out of committee is to acknowledge the hiring of Jesse Sanders as park maintenance employee at step 2, which is $20.47 per hour, effective October 26, 2020, and I so move.
And second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Basically that this has already been approved by the park board. So what happened is when Bob Anderson transferred to the street department, they needed to backfill it. They had 123 applicants and 9 interviews. So this was ratified on the 27th. So.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
All right, item number 5 is deferred assessments. And so coming out of committee, the motion is to is to approve the applications for deferment of assessment payable in 2021 for the applicants at PIDs 41191220, 413000682, 411911702, and 411911721, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Just so you know that these assessments, these are 6 applications from 4 residents. They've all been approved in the past. We had 1 resident that did not meet the market value criteria, but as last year also, it was kind of unusual circumstances, so it was approved.
Okay, and then one question. This is all of the applications we received, and we're approving them all?
So far, all the applications we've received so far, a couple more have been sent out.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
Takes us to item number 6, which is the 2021 dental assurance. And motion coming out of committee is to accept the 2021 dental insurance proposal submitted by Delta Dental with a 3% rate reduction, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So the employee insurance committee basically decided that they wanted to go out for quotes from Health Partners and some other ones. There were 3 additional quotes submitted. They're recommending Delta Dental. While there's a 3% reduction, it also had basically the best coverage network. And this insurance is fully paid for by the employees. The city's not paying this.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson. T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
Okay, item 7 is to extend the retirement date for Police Chief Corky McQuiston. We tried to get that passed indefinitely, but that didn't quite work. So the motion coming out of committee is to approve delaying Police Chief Corky McQuiston's retirement date from November 28, 2020 to January 16th, 2021, and I so move.
And I so second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So basically, the council had accepted his retirement, but staff learned that it's highly unlikely for us to get a replacement before January 25th. So Police Chief McQuiston offered to extend that date past to the 16th. So when you look at it, basically the finalists we're hoping to have them selected by November 3rd, interview December 10th. The only other thing on this is since it's going later, he's paying Chris. What was the phraseology on that? Is she here? That it's the 2021 payout and not the 2020 payout.
That is correct. So
his wages will be paid at his 2021 rate instead of 2020 rate.
So, all right.
Bonus. Well, okay, any other discussion? And it sounds like we'll be able to have a chief in place by
Right, and we should be able,
mid-January.
if we need to have an interim, then we can, the council will have time to vote on an interim if needed.
Okay, any other discussion? Chris?
One other thing, we're asking that the full council be able to meet on December 10th to interview our police chief applicants. So there will be the Civil Service Commission interview panel as well as the city council, both of you having your interviews that day. So please save the date, December 10th, and we will send more information about when that interview will actually be held.
Okay, and that, who does the hiring there? Is that the Civil Service Commission's decision or the city council's decision?
It is the city council's decision as far as hiring the individual. However, because we utilize the civil service process, the civil service recommends to you their top 3 applicants. From those top 3, you have to, you can select who your police chief will be. The reason why we're asking you to do the top 7 is because state law says you are the final hiring authority. And in order to meet with veterans preference laws, all top 7 people have to be able to have an interview with the final hiring authority. So that's why we're asking you to meet on December 10th.
So is this going to be 7 hours of interviewing then? It'll be like each candidate will get 45 minutes or whatnot.
Yankee pot roast.
Yankee pot
Yeah. roast
for everybody, yeah. Okay, so December 10th, everybody put that on your calendars.
That makes it more than worth it with the Yankee pot roast.
Will the kids be okay, Dave?
Oh, I think they'll be fine.
It's the mayor's fiance's birthday that day too, so he's gonna miss his.
And the water tower, 100th anniversary of the board.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we got
We'll meet at the water tower.
Interviews in the water
I
tower.
have all sorts of reasons to get in trouble for not.
All right, any other discussion on the extending the retirement date for Police Chief Quiston? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
yes,
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
All right, item number 8 is the 2021 budget and levy workshop to set the workshop date. And the recommendation, motion coming out of committee is to hold the budget workshop on Monday, November 30th, 2020 at 6 p.m. And I so move.
Second.
All right. So what we're looking at is basically, we've indicated the desire for another workshop before the 12th. That 9th might be too early. The 23rd, people are going to be getting ready for Thanksgiving, and we'll definitely have, the public information out by the 30th, which is kind of why we're leaning that way.
Okay, does that work for everybody, November 30th? That's my wife's
What
birthday,
kind,
so I
guys?
don't really want to do it, but I will.
Bring her
Well, bring
along.
her
What
along,
ki-
yeah.
what
Bring her along, she would enjoy it.
Well, who wouldn't?
It's date night, hon.
Mr. Chair,
Jan?
is, what time again? Did
6.
I- 6, okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes,
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
End of report.
Thank you, Alderman Pritchett. That moves us to number 7, unfinished business. 7A is the adjourned public hearing and resolution, proposed assessments, the 2020 nuisance abatement. Jansky.
Thank you, Mr. President. On October 19th, the City Council held the annual public hearing for the nuisance assessments. Those are for 2020. There were 5 contested assessments that the council removed from the roll on the 19th and adjourned the public hearing to today, November 2nd. At this time, in the attached resolution, all staff, we did list all 5 assessments, pending your review to remove any. At this time, staff, we are recommending removing all assessments except PID 41241036. As we did reach out to that property owner multiple times over multiple days. We're never able to get a hold of him, and he never returned any of our phone calls. All other contested assessments we were able to come to resolutions for.
Okay, Bevins.
Mr. Chairman, I asked Mr. Tansky what those resolutions were.
You may.
So for Well, the one I listed that we hadn't had as of October 29th, so PID 413608227, that was for an unregistered vehicle. In that situation, she explained to the council that it was it was a vehicle that she hadn't been able to get work on, but she felt like if she paid the $500, she wouldn't be able to work on it. Asked council if she could move it into the garage. Council at that point seemed semi okay with that. She has moved it into the garage, so it is no longer visible. For PID 413609119, that was for an unregistered vehicle. The situation with that vehicle is that vehicle got stuck in probate after the death of a relative, and so they had trouble getting it registered because they couldn't get the title to it. Once the title was received, it was registered, and it is now registered properly. The first one listed there, PID 413600945, that was for an improperly parked trailer that actually had been resolved. And it was actually my intention to remove the assessment part of the original notice. It just didn't get removed to the original notice. And then PID 412414110. This is explained during the WebEx council meeting on the 19th. This was a situation where a tree had been tagged by Katie Kaufman, who's the city's tree inspector, for removal. At some point, there was a breakdown in communication. We're not sure exactly where it happened, where the property owner communicated with Ms. Kaufman that he would remove the tree himself. However, Jason Stockinger, who is our building inspector who conducts the enforcements, he did not get that information, and so it went unresponded to, and so it went to our contractor for abatement. By the time Ms. Kaufman had gotten a hold of Mr. Stockinger, the tree had already been removed by the contractor when the property owner had intended to remove it himself. So at some point we're not 100% sure exactly where that happened. Where did the property owner call Ms. Kaufman after the list had already been sent? Was there a delay in calling Jason? We're not 100% sure where that breakdown of information came to, but it was the property owner's full intention to remove that tree. And based off of knowledge of that property owner, we fully believe he would have removed that tree, as he has done so in the past with other properties he owns.
Thank you, David. Kelly, you had another question?
I did, if I may have Mr. Chansky.
May.
When you say you've reached out to the four that responded, and I'm particularly referring to the properties ending in 945 and 410. I'm sorry, 410 was the tree.
Yeah.
It's the other two, 827 and 919, the hidden car in the garage trick. My question is, did you negotiate and basically say, put the car in the garage and we'll abate the assessment?
I did not.
Okay.
So in that situation, what would have happened is she brought it up, I believe, in council, and then I think what council didn't actually give her an answer whether or not that was okay. You just said, we'll remove it from the roll and have on the second. And when we went out to inspect to see if it was still there, at that point it had been moved, we assume into the garage, but it's no longer in the driveway. Where the vehicle went, we're not 100% sure, other than I only can assume the garage because she mentioned the garage, but we don't know exactly where the vehicle went. It's just no longer on the property that we can see.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah. Oh, Paul?
Procedurally, Mr. Chair, if I may, you should open the public hearing that was adjourned and then take any additional testimony and then close it.
Okay, we'll open a public hearing at 7:50. Is there anybody here to speak on the proposed assessments for abatement? Anybody here to speak on the assessments? Is there anybody here to speak on the assessments? Is there anybody who called in or anything, Sean?
No.
Seeing nobody step forward, we will close the public hearing at 7:50. And now I'm looking for a motion to adopt the attached resolution.
So moved.
Motion by Pritchett.
Lambert, second.
Second by Lambert.
Chair, if I may.
David?
Adopting the, just a clarification, adopting the resolution as it sits would mean adopting all nuisance assessments.
Oh,
So we
so
wrote staff,
what was your motion, Pritchett?
And you wanted to remove,
We left them in there because I didn't want to presume that council wanted to remove any of them.
Okay.
So I apologize for that clarification. So we put them in there, assuming, then leaving it up to council to decide which ones to remove. At this time, staff's recommendation is to remove
all of them except for 41241036.
Correct.
And that's what I'll move.
Okay. Is that what your second is to, Nick?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution, but removing those 4 PID numbers that David Chansky discussed. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to speak against the motion. I think there's 2 legitimate requests for deferral here, property number 945 and the tree one at 410. Had the other 2 with the cars called in. There's a 1-800 number on the bottom. Instead of having problems, I can't meet the financial burden because the car won't run, or well, I can't remember what the other one. The other one was the title situation. I would be 100% if they made the effort when they got the letter. But to wait 6 months until the day of the assessment hearing and then come plead what they pleaded, I don't think they're making the effort at all. And the one even said, how about if I hide it in the garage? So I think the effort to me needs to be made when you get the letter with the phone number to call if you have an issue. The other 2 I think have, well, I can't speak about 036, but the one with the tree and the one with 945, I can't remember what that one is. Those seem to be circumstances that our staff worked out in a timely manner. They just didn't make it to the assessment rolls. So I would favor 945 and 410, but none of the other 3.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote by roll call on the motion to adopt the resolution removing the 4 PIDs at the bottom of the list here. Let's vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
No.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on the Children's Museum.
So thank you, Mr. President, members of the council and mayor. On October 15th, the Children's Museum Task Force did meet to discuss the potential placement of the Children's Museum. WIDSEF presented 4 options, which are in your packet, and they're also on the screen. At the end of the discussion, the task force decided on a combination of option A and option C, with the Children's Museum being located not where the park buildings are, but elsewhere in Lum Park. The plan was that WIDSEF was going to combine those, take the comments of the task force, and then bring that back to next week's task force meeting. The park board discussed this at their October 27th meeting. While the park board is very supportive of the Children's Museum, they're concerned about the integrity of Lum Park. As you can see, both of these options, one shows the campground being relocated. The other shows an expansion of the road that currently goes through Lum Park, but expanding it all the way to Wonderland Park Road. Those were certainly a couple of the concerns. Vice President of the Park Board, Kevin Yeager, is here should you have questions of him as well. But they passed a motion to draft correspondence to be given to the leadership of the Children's Museum that states that the Park Board will not support moving forward with any design that presents the building in a location other than what the city and the Park Board have already said that they want. Also, to no longer continue with the task force until the museum comes back to us with something that is a better fit for what we've described. So although the charter states that the Park and Recreation Board have control of the parks, the Park Board has asked that the council support the motion that was passed by the Park Board. I've provided some additional background that was provided to the park board back in August, so I know this is a really long agenda item, but it just gave you the original RFP, the response, the letter of intent between us and the Children's Museum, as well as the letter of intent for the master plan with WIDSEF. So our recommendation, staff's recommendation, is to authorize staff to draft correspondence to support the park board's decision and to sever the relationship with the Region 5 Children's Museum. Mayor Bedeau, as well as Alderwoman Lambert, are on the task force, and as I mentioned, Vice President Yeager of the Park Board is present, and he is also a member of the task force. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Kelly, you have a question?
Just the obvious one, and I don't know if this would be for any of our three representatives here this evening. What consequences do you think this would have with the Region 5 Children's Museum? I mean, I could think of a few, but I wasn't there.
Mr. Chair, Alderman Bevins, I did have the opportunity to speak with Paul Drange today, who is with Sourcewell and also on the Region 5 Children's Museum Board. I also spoke with Cheryl Hills, who's on the Region 5 Children's Museum Board, and I spoke with Peter Olson, just to let them know that our recommendation tonight was to sever the relationship. However, I didn't know what the council would decide, but I wanted to give them the courtesy of giving them a call before they found out about it. So I think Paul Drange said that he wasn't surprised by this. Peter Olson didn't really say much. And Cheryl Hills also said she wasn't surprised that much by this recommendation.
She was not surprised?
Was not.
Mr. Chair, I don't think that answered my question. My concern is not the reactions, but the consequences. Let me be very specific, because I don't know that you understand.
Yep.
Are we going to lose the Children's Museum over this?
I don't know that a decision has been made. I think the Region 5 Children's Museum Board will have to go back and discuss this again. I did say that, the city is excited about a children's museum. It's just that the park board did not believe that this fit Inland Park, and that we would be interested in continuing discussions if we could find another location. I don't know what the Region 5 Children's Museum Board will decide. I think it depends on where this goes from here this evening.
I think this would effectively end Lum Park as a location for the Children's Museum, but
I just need a clarification. Was not our presentation, Lum Park, our application?
So the response to the proposal offered the park buildings at Lum Park, and if that proposal is included in your packet.
so, yeah, Kelly, when we initially submitted their RFP, that's when
Yes.
we were in the talks of moving our parks maintenance guys into the streets department and parks admin
Yeah.
to City Hall.
Which is
and
happening.
Which is happening, and we're still doing that, but then it would vacate those buildings and create space right there at the entry of the park. And that's what we offered. They toured the park as part of their RFP process, and they really liked other places of the park, but not so much the admin buildings. So they've been giving us renderings and drawings of putting it on the beach or in the middle of the park or replacing the campground. They have ideas like that, but that was never really what was submitted. And the reason we did this task force jointly with them is last year they kept showing us, or they showed us renderings of it in the middle of the park, and we kind of hesitated and said, well, that's not really what we offered. We were thinking the admin buildings. So they said if we go through this process, they will show us how they cannot have any impact on any of the current uses of the park and get a children's museum in there. But I just think these renderings show you that you can't put a children's museum in the middle of the park and not displace other current uses. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, my comments would be that, and Kevin can speak to this, or Jan can speak to it as well. As we moved through the options that were presented, the 4 options, it was informed to the group that the Children's Museum was not interested in the options that were not located, or that were located where we had offered. So for various reasons, they said they're not interested in the site that we offered. They were interested in sites that were further into the park, which was a concern, I believe, of the park board, and Kevin can speak for the park board themselves, but the park board during the process stated that they were not interested in presenting the building further into the park. They were interested in having it closer to the entrance so there would be less disruption, but he can speak to that himself.
Mr. Chair, this is Jan.
Yep.
My thought, and I've always wanted to look at the Child Museum more into the park, for the simple reason it would bring people into our park so they would know, because we're probably gonna get people that are, you know, from out of town. It'll just show it'll show what we have. So I have wanted to have it more in the park, and I was going more with the A. I don't want to disrupt anything like the campground or anything like that. But I don't think that it would be pretty. Going into the park, the entrance is pretty right now. It's green, it's beautiful. I like it. But to put a building right up there, I don't, it'd take away some of the atmosphere, I think. But I think it should be more inside the park. I guess I've always said that, but thanks.
Thank you, Jan. So, Tad,
I guess I'm a little confused at the change in the tone and the tenor. You know, the supporting material that was provided, the letter of May 2nd, 2019, from the Parks and Rec president is very, very supportive, and it identifies in Lum Park. So from going from there to now severing ties, you know, I think there's 4 options up here. None of these are anywhere close enough to renegotiate. I mean, help me. I mean, I'm not in these meetings, so I don't know, but that's a pretty wide schism from this letter in the packet to, and then also it looks like the memo says possibly A and C. So I guess I'm confused. Where would the park board like to see it? And hopefully Kevin could speak to that. Because, I mean, they provided 4 different options.
yeah, I think B and D are the options that would present to kind of where the park admin buildings are, but even then, it's kind of not there either.
And I guess
So
last
I guess
comment
I
is
wasn't
I'd
really
be-
part of this either, Tad. So, I mean, could you frame up this task force for me? Like, who was the chair of the committee?
If I could just, last thing too, and just, I'd be concerned about losing it as well. I mean, we vied for this, and so.
So I don't
That's all.
know. Yeah, if you could try and answer Tad's question, if somebody, Kevin, Jennifer, why the jump?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council, members in the House. I wasn't prepared to come up and speak tonight, but I do thank you for the opportunity. And basically, what I can shed a little light from the park board's perspective on this. Task force was created. 2 members, or I was brought to the table as a member of to represent the park board on the task force. And what I can tell you is that from the very first meeting, not only did the mayor speak quite clearly and in plain speaking to the members of the Children's Museum that the space that the council would like to see the buildings located was in the basic proximity of where the current park department buildings are, but also the park department or the park board felt very much the same way in the very initial meetings as the task force was formed. What I can tell you is that virtually instantly there was resistance to that in the task force meetings, and we were presented with an option of, okay, we hear what you were saying, but we would like for you to at least explore some other options, some other design options, in which we agreed. Those options were brought forward, and I can tell you that the park board looked at these exhaustively and came to basically the same conclusion, that we just felt that the building, the Children's Museum, the parking lot related to the Children's Museum located anywhere other than the options or close to the options B and D that you see on your screen now was just far too disruptive to our park. The Parks Board is fashioning a master plan for Memorial Park, and then also we are contributors to this master plan. And while we are supporters of the museum, 100%, and would like to see it, we just had concerns, voice those concerns early, and sustain the opinion that our concerns are valid with the buildings being located anywhere other than roughly in the area of B and D.
Answer your
Mr.
question,
Chair,
Tad?
this is Jan
Hang
again.
on, Jan. Does that answer your question,
bet.
Tad?
Can you say the last part about B and D? Those are where you don't want it, or those are where you'd want them?
Those are roughly in the vicinity of where we would like to see it. We would like to see the buildings and especially the parking lots. The parking lot really is one of the biggest considerations for us. Keep in mind that these drawings are just rough preliminary drawings. They don't necessarily represent the full scope of what we think we might have for parking or the impact of the building on the park itself. So we just feel and still feel and have felt the entire time that the better fit was where we already have parking, already have buildings, already have the infrastructure in place versus in the core of our green space.
Okay, Jan.
I'd just like to make a comment that the public that were in the task force, the consensus basically was A and C, like to have a combination of A and C. So there was extensive communication with that. You know, try to. There's things we liked about A, and there's things they liked about C. I just think it's a little premature to say sever ties. I would like to sit down with the park board and perhaps the city and the park board, see what they want. I don't think location necessarily, that location could be a compromise. You know, so, and I don't know if we're going to hear from Tony or not on that, but I just think I think we really need to think about this before we go too much further on severing ties.
Thanks, Jan. So Kevin, Mayor Bedeau, you're on the task force. You guys are of the opinion that in the middle of the park is the right spot, Dave?
So, and I've voiced my opinion of it extensively as well, that I don't think that it is. Looking at option C, I felt that option C was at least a less disruptive option. However, you are putting traffic onto Wonderland Park Road, which was my concern with it. We need to be good stewards of our neighbors as well, but placing it up by the water and the big issue I have with A is the relocation of that road is going to be extremely expensive. I think Engineer Sandy said somewhere $400,000 to $500,000 to move that road the way that it is. It's not just the building; it's the other pieces that flow with it as well. But to Jan's point, when we got to A and C, it was after a question was asked specifically, and I believe by Mr. Yeager, are we beating a dead horse if we are to continue in that group looking at B and D, because it didn't seem like the Children's Museum group was interested, and they pretty bluntly said they were not interested in either B or D. And so from that point, we went and selected from A and C, but it was really, at that point, the decision had been addressed to the group as they weren't really interested in it.
I agree 100%. When we entered the task force meeting, it was my belief that we were looking at 4 designs of which we were going to collectively as a group talk about. Very, very early on in the discussion, we were steered to a specific point in which I specifically asked, is B or D actually an option that the Children's Museum would continue this process with? To which it was basically said, no. We do not see the museum, they said, I'm maybe paraphrasing, but they said, we do not see the museum anywhere located near the park board buildings. In which time then the discussion went to options A and C, and we basically, the group, not me in particular, but the group came to the conclusion that it was going to be, that we were going to continue forward with a version of A and C combined.
Okay, and that's Kelly.
Thank you. May I ask Mr. Yeager one more question?
You can ask Mr. Yeager a question, yeah.
Kevin, is there, just because I heard what Jan said, and I certainly understand completely where this is coming, was there a vote count? I mean, was this a vote count? Was this a 6 to 7 count? Or I don't know how many people?
Not at all. In fact, very early on in the task force meeting, Mr. Bevins, someone from the room did ask if we should institute some version of a vote. And the leadership of the meeting said specifically they did not want to see a vote take place. They wanted this to happen in a version of free-form discussion.
So we don't know for sure if this recommendation reflects the group's wills or not. I understand your position, but Jan seems to imply that something different. And I want to support the committee. I believe in the committee process. I think that's why we have committees. That being said, if the committee's will is to work with A and C, then this motion, this proposed motion, seems to reflect against the committee's wishes. Without knowing, how do I know?
Mr. Bevins, I can say that, sorry, Jan?
No, go ahead, Kevin.
My
Go ahead,
question is for
Kevin.
you, and then he'll help.
Mr. Bevins, I can say quite frankly that I don't know what the outcome would have been in a vote. I do
Okay.
feel that there were people in the room specifically who felt very strongly, myself being one of them, as well as the members of the board whom I represent coming to in attendance of the
Sure.
meeting, that that we wanted to see the buildings or a version of B and D, not A and C. So
I get
I can't
that.
speak to the outcome.
Mr. Chair?
Jan, please wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
But this proposed motion doesn't necessarily reflect the committee's wishes. Yes? No? Yes? And can you answer that?
I cannot answer that. I cannot speak to what the committee's
Okay.
aspirations are for continuing on the discussion.
Because
What I can speak to is the park board.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Mr.
Because the committee has no chair, has not voted, doesn't have any structure of a typical committee.
Then Gabe, where did this motion come from?
Jennifer?
Mr.
Can you
Chair,
answer that?
Alderman Bevins, this motion was as a result of the park board meeting last week.
Got
The
it.
park board, by charter, is in control of what happens within our parks. And in August, the park board made a motion that they were not interested in this being in a location other than where the park buildings are. That was unanimously passed. Then last Tuesday at the park board meeting, this was once again discussed at the park board, and the park board once again, the motion is actually verbatim in your report. Once again, had a discussion on this and had a motion saying that they were not interested in having the Children's Museum be located anywhere else but where the park buildings are. So the reason this is before you and the reason that this is a recommended motion was as a result of the discussion of the park board. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay,
that does.
I have a couple questions, Jennifer.
Yes.
So if we vote to sever ties, that just means we don't talk to the Children's Museum people anymore. Or what does a severed tie look like in this situation?
Thank you, good point. I think that severing ties in this scenario means that the discussion of the Children's Museum in Lum Park we'll no longer have that discussion. From my perspective, it seems like, as you've heard from Kevin Yeager and Mayor Bedeau, that the Children's Museum feels very strongly about the Children's Museum being located somewhere inside the park. And the park board feels very strongly about the Children's Museum being located where the park buildings are. And it seems to me we're at an impasse. If the park board is strongly saying they want it where the park buildings are located, and the Children's Museum is saying they are not interested in that location, it just seems like we're at an impasse.
Right, and I know I've had Peter and Paul have both told me, like at the onset of this task force, they both told me, if it ends up where the admin buildings are, we are walking away. So we may not even need to sever ties. If we just tell them it has to be where the park buildings are, they can sever the. But my second question is, how close is this task force to being done with the master plan or done working with Widseth on the other components of the park that aren't Children's Museum-y?
So, Mr. Chair, as was mentioned, the next task force meeting is scheduled for next week. And Widseth was going to bring back some drawing that kind of combined A and C, options A and C, and then took into account what was discussed at the task force meeting. As far as where it goes with the master plan, those are things that we're going to have to work out and bring back to council. I just didn't know what direction the council would like to go. I think that Widseth has certainly started with a master plan. You can see an expansion of the beach. There's some discussion about a trailhead over by where the park buildings are. I think there were some other elements, a trail. So they certainly have started talking about other elements within Lum Park in addition to the Children's Museum. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, would this task force still be meeting with Widseth and developing a master plan, or if we severed ties, would it just dissolve this task force?
I believe that it would dissolve. I think the task force was specific to the Children's Museum.
Mr. Chair, may I speak now?
3 times on the issue. Does anybody else have anything to say before we go to a motion? Jan, you have something else?
Yes, I just want to say that the question of, granted, there wasn't a vote, but the moderator said, so this is a consensus, and nobody objected to the, looking at the new A and C. There was no objections. And everybody, he said, it looks like a consensus, so there was no objections to doing that. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Jan. It appears there are 2 people in this room that do have objections.
And I'll
Mayor Bideau.
speak to that just briefly if you allow me. And maybe Kevin felt the same way. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about how he felt about it. But when we got to that end part, there was no point in me making objections at that point. I had spoke my thoughts on it. The park board had iterated their stance on it. At the beginning of the meeting, I tried to iterate the park board stance in that, just so everyone's aware, they are really interested in having that towards the entrance of this park. We need to be looking at that instead of trying to create some new idea and force feed that down people's throats. I think the better idea would be to look at what's being offered and try to figure out something that will fit within that facility. And even in your guys' motion, you said in the general vicinity of the park board buildings. So not on top of the park board buildings, but in that general vicinity. But when we got to the choice between A or C, I preferred C. There were other people in the group that preferred C, but my choice of that was based off of not being allowed to choose between the other ones. You know, we pretty quickly eliminated one of B or D based off of access being forced onto Wonderland Park Road. But you know, if you would have asked me to vote, I would have voted very loudly that I wanted it where the park board was asking for it.
Okay, so the question before us right now, as the city council, is where do we go from here? We have a children's museum that very clearly wants to put their museum in a location in a city park that the park board is not comfortable with. So we, as a city council, can just, I suppose, remove our Lum Park offer to the Children's Museum. We could sever ties. We could do nothing and just hope the park board and Children's Museum get it worked out. But we should probably do something. Wayne?
I would like us to not sever ties, but maybe if they hear from the city council that we want to renegotiate the location of it, maybe they think they'll listen to us more than they will the park board. I don't know. Of course, the mayor was representing us, but I hate to see us sever ties. But
Does it, Mr. Chair, and this was really a question for Administrator Bergman, Does it cost us anything to wait and see what WSN comes up with?
No, it does not cost us anything. We're in a contract with WIDSEF for the master plan for Lum Park.
Okay, all right.
And there is a scheduled task force meeting for next Thursday.
Mr. Chair, I would hold off on this motion until I see back. I understand exactly both sides of the issue. And I also understand that if we're not gonna get anywhere, we're not gonna get anywhere. And I think it's important to have the support of the park board. It's going in a park, a City of Brainerd Park. On the other side of the coin, if we can see what WSN comes up with, those are creative people. I have faith that they will do the best job they can. And hear back from the task force one more time, hopefully with a little bit more task force direction. If we need to, we can act on this in 2 weeks. That would be my recommendation.
I kind of agree. I also agree with, Councilman Erickson. I don't want to see us sever this, but the park board's looking for support. We can't make the park board accept anything because when you look at it, the park board is in control of the parks. I think we were pretty upfront with where we wanted the museum to be in our earlier discussions. I don't know if this was the case, but listening to it, it almost seemed like any dissent was kind of railroaded in a specific direction, which it sounds like I don't like when people come to meetings with an agenda that they're gonna force and not listen to dissent. So hopefully that's not the case, and they'll be open to, maybe discussing and coming up with something else. But practically, if they come up with something that the park board doesn't want, we could totally disagree with the park board. The park board could still say, nope, not going there. And I kind of agree with, we support our staff, we support our committees, and so now we got two committees here that are kind of at loggerheads, and I'd like to see them have a little bit more discussion and maybe wait with our decision on that.
I think everybody in here is supporting the museum. I understand what Kevin's saying, I understand what the mayor's saying. I would tend to agree, let's take a deep breath, because we don't want to cut ties with Region 5. See if we can come onto a better option. We can always make a decision in 2 weeks. So I would support that moving forward.
The next item on the agenda is a call for applicants. Mayor Bedell.
All right, digging right into it. All right, call for applicants. The following applications are available on the City of Brainerd website. That is www.ci.brainerd.mn.us. I am looking for the following terms that expire 12/31 of said year. The Cable TV Advisory Committee, 1 term expiring 2021, 2 terms expiring 2022. The Charter Commission, 2 terms expiring 2020, and the Brainerd Housing and Redevelopment Authority, 1 term expiring 2020. We're also looking for applicants for the Water Tower Committee and the Parking Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. That brings us to item number 8, new business. 8A, donation of downtown speaker system. Mike, Jennifer, who's taking this?
And disco ball?
Yes?
Go ahead, Mike.
Good evening, everybody. Mike Anglin, 15873 Old Stone Bridge Trail, Brainerd. So this is our 3rd update officially for you regarding the downtown's Sound for Downtown is what we're calling it. So we're very excited to announce to you tonight. Included in your packet was a letter updating you that we were successful in funding speakers for downtown, and through very generous giving from our community. And so so we're here tonight basically to just give you guys an update that we have them in hand. They're actually delivered. They're at Music General. So it's real. They're here and we're really excited about it. It's just another great example of the collaboration that we have experienced over the years. The photo that we included within our letter to you, the You Betcha We're Here for Good, that really is a feel-good image that we took downtown this summer, and it just summarizes what can be done with the community. So one of the things we'd like to do is just give a shout out and a thanks to some community helpers here. So we've got Music General, Dan Kuhn, He's been instrumental in helping us out with this technology and working on the installation of it. Also with city staff, Jennifer Bergman, Paul Sandy, Sean Strong, David Chansky. So we reach out to them and bug them about a lot of things throughout the year, and they're always very supportive and helpful. So thank you for your help. Brainerd Public Utilities, Scott Magnuson, he's also been very helpful throughout this process. I think the biggest thing to note here is that we didn't have any of our annual fundraising events this year, which is 100% of our funding. Yet through COVID-19 and through all the downtimes for all the local businesses and other nonprofits, we are able to raise this money. So it's really just a shout out to our community that even though we're all going through some tough times, we were able to raise the money for this. And so we're really proud of it, very excited. We do have an ask, however, for you. And so here to talk about that is John Schomer with Brainerd Restoration as well. And so John, could you come up and talk about the technical aspects and what we'll be asking of the city of Brainerd?
Thank you, Mike, Chairman Johnson, and members of the council. So as Mike had mentioned, the system itself, as you see in your packet, there's some information regarding it. There's the approximate location of where the speakers would be located downtown. It is kind of a line of sight system. So how that works is there's a transmitter that's placed somewhere. We're requesting that that would be placed here on top of City Hall. It would be mounted on what is called a sled, so it wouldn't be bolted to the building, so there would be no penetrations. And currently you can see up on the screen, there's a good example of that on the right-hand side. That transmitter then would transmit the sound, music, announcement, whatever it may be, over to each speaker unit. Each unit has a receiver on it and is also connected to the speakers themselves. And then that speaker repeats it to the next speaker. So it's coming up here, you can see the approximate locations that we're proposing. These locations were laid out by Street Sounds. It's the manufacturer of the system itself. So kind of a brief overview of how it looks. And again, as Mr. Anglin had mentioned, our ask would be that we'd be able to locate the transmitter here at City Hall. And also the music that would be played would be through a web-based service. And that was also in there is called Cloudbox. It is already, the licensing to utilize the music is through them. There's a monthly service fee. DDBC has agreed to purchase that box and also to pay for that service. Obviously, the city of Brainerd would also be allowed to have access to that. The box does allow them to control the music remotely, so the city would also have access to that. Basic overview of the system, how it would be laid out, where it would be placed. Are there any other questions regarding the system?
I do. If the city would have control, would we be able to have like an administrative control where we could turn off music that somebody else with access turned on?
So essentially, what we discussed is that the city would have access and would be able to change that service.
But let's say Dave Pritchett gets access to some controls downtown and starts playing some vulgar music, and people start complaining. If we called City Hall, could Sean Strong or whoever just kill it?
He would have access to that. Yes.
Okay.
So much for my red hot chili pepper.
Yeah. That is my one question. Any other questions of John?
The music service does have themed music. So, for example, Halloween they had,
Monster Mash.
Yeah, stuff like that. And during Christmas they would have, appropriately themed music. It is already kind of vetted. The music is, so any offensive language or topics would be removed already. So.
Good.
Mr. Chair.
Jan?
When you're talking about announcements, what are you talking about? Is it the announcements like we're having the farmer's market in process? Is that the kind of announcements you're talking about?
Exactly. That's what we would envision is that the farmer's market was a perfect example. DDBC, I know, has been working to try and get more events downtown and to promote those events.
Okay.
Public service announcements, things of that nature was our intention for it.
Okay, oh, thank you.
Well, excellent. So what action do we need to take here? We need to adopt.
So,
I
Mr.
moved ahead. Kelly, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the donation of the downtown speaker system and direct staff to develop an agreement between the city, Brainerd Restoration, and the Destination Downtown Brainerd Coalition regarding the operation and maintenance of the system, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes?
Bevins.
Yes?
W. Erickson.
Yeah.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes,
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
Thank you. We would also like to just recognize some of the funding partners. As Mr. England mentioned, you know, all of our fundraising with COVID has been thwarted. So Crowing Power through Operation Roundup did donate a substantial amount of money, as did Mid-Minnesota Federal Credit Union. So we'd like to publicly thank them. And again, with all the other partners and the staff of the city, they're definitely phenomenal to work with. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think the BPU guys are going to install the speakers for us. Good, good. Okay, that'll bring us to the next item on the agenda. This one has me pretty excited. 8B, the order of the agenda.
Thank you, Chair, member of the council. So several months ago, staff was directed to complete rules and order for all boards and committees. And conversation at that time was held about the order of the agenda and the report of payments and bills being included in the packet versus being a separate attachment. And it was also mentioned that the bills used to be on the consent calendar. And so staff was going to research and come back to council. Well, we did and discovered that the city had rules of procedure and decorum that was adopted in 1994 and was reaffirmed and amended in 2003. There were documents were attached as well as portion of the minutes from those 2 years when the meeting, when the document was talked about. Staff does recall that the committee reports being moved after the consent calendar, after presentation, since at the time the city administrator felt that it was most of the work was done at the committee levels, and so we should put that closer in the order of the agenda. It was not realized that we had this document, and so for that we apologize. And we can definitely start adding the report of bills as part of the packet instead of a separate attachment, as it is unknown why that practice started in particular. So staff did highlight and redlined areas for discussion and recommended changes. Some of the recommended for discussion was the use of Sturgis Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure versus Robert's Rules of Order. You can see that that was changed in 1996. Where payments of bills should be, the consent or on P&F agenda, and then just the general order of the agenda. So we took the document and we kind of redlined, kind of based on our current procedures. We either felt that we need to change our current practices to match the document or match the document to do our current procedures. And so we did suggest leaning more towards how we have been doing it the last several years. It is up for council decision. And I think we just kind of clarify some language, you know, instead of reports by mayor and department heads, we separated those out. So it is totally up to council's discussion.
Thank you, Connie. I found this document when I was appointed council president, and I've been asking for 2 years why our rules of decorum have a different order than our actual agenda. And I'm really excited for tonight where we can possibly make our rules and our agendas match each other. But I guess I'd be looking for a motion to adopt the amended rules of procedure and decorum for city council meetings as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Bevins, a second by Tad Erickson to amend the rules of procedure and decorum. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is,
Jan?
now, my understanding with this, all our committees will follow this rule of order.
Well,
'Cause I know
Jan,
there's-
we have two staff recommendations. The first one is we're adopting the change. We may have a second motion to force our committees to use this or not,
Oh.
but that's not this motion.
Okay, okay.
But, so just, you made just some brief changes that basically brought in line what we're currently doing to being the rules of how we put things together. And that's basically the only change we're voting on here. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes,
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Then that brings us to the second recommendation from staff. It'd be a motion to have the rules of procedure and decorum apply to all city boards and committees. But before we make that motion, I just have to ask, we don't really have, every commission doesn't have a personnel and finance and safety and public works committee. So it is kind of specifically tailored to the council and not really the committee. So would it make sense to force all of our city commissions to put council committee reports on their agenda?
And maybe that wouldn't apply to the committees, and so therefore that would not be part of their agenda, was kind of the thought process. I think was more of the decorum on how to operate the meetings than it was the procedure for the agendas, was what I think the request was several months ago,
Okay.
was of how we operate.
Kelly?
Mr. Chair, I think you could just, you could modify it a little bit and just say committees or subcommittees of the committee. You wouldn't label them PNF or SPNW the way we have them, but it is possible that the Transportation Advisory Board or committee could have a subcommittee reporting on something. So I mean, I would think committee reports may be legitimate.
Yeah.
They might not always have them, but it could be in the rules of decorum.
So I think what we would take out is the part that's in parentheses. It would be committee reports. Take off the council and say committee reports, and take off the personnel and finance and safety and public works.
We just amended the, the document to put those in there.
Yes, we did. But further on talking about how it fits the other committees, that kind
Yeah.
of makes sense.
Yes.
And really, we're not changing what we just talked
You
about.
could label them, my apologies, Mr. Chairman, you could label them
Committee
rules for
reports.
committees.
Yeah.
Rules and decorum for committees as modified from the council decorum. I mean, it would, you're overthinking it.
Mr.
Do
Chair.
you have a motion? Jan?
Just, there's, Robert's Rules of Order is more familiar with everybody. But I have to say, with the different committees I've been on, it would be nice to be standardized. I know there's been a couple, the TAC was one that follows the Rules of Order, Robert's Rules of Order. So it would be nice if we could get everybody under one roof. And if we could modify the agenda, that would be great.
Is that a motion, Jan?
You sure can make it a motion. I do.
Second.
What is the motion, Jan?
The motion is to have the committee agendas follow the Sturgis Rule of Order and modify the agenda to the committees.
How about a motion to have the rules and procedure and decorum apply to all city boards and committees?
Sounds good to me.
I like that one. Is that what you
And
seconded?
modify, you want to modify?
It
Do I have
is,
to do
Mr.
it by-
Chairman, if I may make a comment?
You may.
I certainly support that. I'd like to see that modified after staff gets it done.
So bring it back next council meeting.
Yeah, we can approve it now, but we can approve the principle, but I'd like to see the modified version.
Excellent. And then
Yes.
the motion had nothing to do with Sturgis or Robert's rules or
Right,
anything like
right.
that. Currently, we're under Sturgis, that we're just gonna be pushing Sturgis out to everybody.
Okay. Sounds good.
Jennifer?
And so if I just may comment, if you look at subdivision 3, it does say order of business at regular meetings, and it goes on to say at the regular meeting of the city council. So I think, as Connie mentioned, the intent here was to have these rules of decorum apply to boards and commissions, but that subdivision clearly is addressing city council meetings.
So we might need an entirely new subdivision. Any other discussion on the motion to have the rules of procedure and decorum apply to all city boards and committees? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to the 8C, discussion on airport commission appointments. Sean, is there a call-in user on there? Okay, so that's probably Jeff Cheslock. So Jeff called me and I brought this up onto the agenda just to kind of get the sense of the council and how we're interpreting our policies. We have a policy that says you can serve 6 years on the airport commission and then you must take 2 years off. Well, right now, Jeff Cheslock is currently serving, but he filled in for somebody else's term. So he served 1.5 years and now he's serving a 3-year term. So he will have served 4.5 years, not 6 years. Could he be reappointed at 4.5, or do our policies make him take a 2-year break? And Jeff is kind of looking for clarification on that, and I don't know how we interpret that policy, so I was just kind of bringing it before the council to see what you all thought. Did you unmute Jeff? Jeff, did that kind of summarize it?
I'm here if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So,
Yeah, I that summed it up pretty well, President Johnson. I just would like to know the end of next year is would be 4.5 years that I've served this stint, let's call it. And my complete history, I began in 2012, served 1 year. I got a 3-year appointment. After that, so a total served 4 years, and then I was off from 2016, and I got reappointed in the middle of 2017. That's where my last stint will be at 4.5 years by the end of next year. And I'm wondering if, based on the policy, if that would allow me to serve another 3-year term. I'm not asking you to confirm that right now. Would I be able to apply? Would you guys accept that application? And then further, with our newest appointment of Mr. Riedel, if he chose to go for 2 3-year terms, he would be in the same position I would, because he's filling out a half a term of somebody else at this point. So just a question to see where the council would be if this were to occur.
Thank you, Jeff. And yeah, it is not, as he pointed out, it's not only applicable to him, because I did just appoint, or the council did just appoint somebody to fill out the remaining year of Stacy Headley's term. So when that person is done with a potential 3-year term in the future, they'll be in the same situation. What does our policy mean? Kelly?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think under these circumstances, they should be able to apply. So I don't think the application should be discarded out of hand due to the fact that they did fill in on somebody else's term. Now, that doesn't mean we're gonna appoint them.
And he's not asking to be appointed tonight.
Yeah,
He's
right.
asking if his application will be
That's what I think.
accepted.
There you go.
Yeah. Tad?
Hand up first.
Oh, Kevin?
No, he was first.
Dave?
I'm gonna hand it
I'm
off.
second or third.
In reading it, he doesn't hit any of the terms that would prohibit him from. He hasn't served two 3-year terms. He hasn't served 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So on the face of that, I don't see any problem with him being able to serve again. We might want to come back and make some sort of provision for people who have served partial terms due to these circumstances. But I would see no problem with him applying.
I echo the same thing he said.
Tad?
Same, just all that to say, I agree. It's not an isolated incident or situation that's come up a time or two, so it's a good amendment to make.
This is Jan. I agree too. I think using the term, looking at the word term, he has not fulfilled 2 terms. So, because he completed a half a term. So I agree. I think he would be able to apply again.
Okay, so the general consensus, I think. Kevin?
I would just like to say, we have a hard enough time filling positions on committees and subcommittees and stuff. Here we've got a gentleman who's more than willing to do it. I think we let it go.
I agree. So I think, Jeff, the general consensus, unanimous consensus of the council here is that you would be eligible to apply. So I hope that answers your question. I will just remind you that elections are tomorrow and the majority of these people might not be here next year.
Hey, wait a minute.
See ya.
Mr. Chair, the other thing I'd like to say is, I would say it's the term, not necessarily the 6 years. So I would expect him to follow the 2 terms, which is 3 years each. So he's going to have more than, I don't think he should be held back by saying 6 years.
Okay,
Maybe we need to put full term.
so maybe some clarification in the policy there, Jennifer, if you could bring it back to us so it is written down and people clearly understand it. Okay, thanks for coming, Jeff. Thanks for bringing it to our attention.
May I ask one more thing?
Yep.
I'm a little concerned about consensus votes, as we just heard earlier about the park.
We're gonna bring it back.
They're gonna bring back a revised policy for a recorded vote, Jeff.
Oh, that would be then okay. Thank you. I was just concerned about consensus. Thank you.
Yep, good call. Okay, that brings us to 8D, set special council meeting to canvass general election results.
So per state statute, the city council needs to canvass results. This year, we have 2 dates, either November 12th or the 13th. Staff's recommendation would be to set up a WebEx meeting for Thursday, the 12th at noon. I think the meeting will be quite short, but we do need to make sure that we have a quorum of the council. And then we would need to adjourn this meeting to the canvassing board.
What was that date again, Mr. Chair?
Thursday, the 12th.
Thank you.
Yes. So first of all, we need to determine if there's gonna be a quorum for that time. And then if it's okay to do it via WebEx, and if that date and time is good.
What time did you have?
Noon.
Yeah,
Good for me.
I can do it.
I can do it too, Lambert.
Ted, yeah, we've got a quorum. So we'll do it Thursday, the 12th at noon.
And then we'll just need to adjourn this council meeting to that one.
Okay.
And it's going to be via WebEx.
Okay. So that's, brings us to 9, public forum. Is anybody here to speak in public forum? Anybody here to speak in public forum? Is anybody here to speak in public forum? Seeing none, nobody rise, we will move forward to staff reports. Any verbal updates since the packet, Jennifer?
I do, Mr. President, members of the council, I do have a couple of things. First of all, the Charter Commission is meeting this Thursday, the 5th. We did get some recommended changes from our city attorney. What the decision was of the Charter Commission at their last meeting was to start first with those items in the charter that conflict with state law. So this morning, the Charter Commission packet was sent out with a whole bunch of recommended changes. Secondly, last Friday, we had our Public Works discussion group. And as you recall, we had our first meeting when we had talked about the potential of having an interim Public Works department. Since then, both the council and the park board have asked to move forward with it. What resulted from the last Public Works discussion meeting, Council President Johnson and Alderman Erickson, our members, as well as Kevin Yeager and Kara Schaefer from the park board, was to do a 3-month trial with Katie reporting directly to the park board and to take a look at splitting the administrative assistant's time between the engineering department and also parks. The park staff did move into City Hall last week, so we are thrilled to have Katie, Tony, and Kim all here at City Hall. So I think we're moving forward. I know Paul has already reached out to a couple of people, and we're starting to position ourselves for the interim Public Works Department, and we will bring something at a future council meeting for ratification of that. And then last, but certainly not least, thanks to you who were able to participate, I'm proud to announce that Corky McQuiston was chosen for the Distinguished Community Service Member Award. On October 21st, we had the honor of surprising him with that award. Very, very well deserved, and just once again wanted to congratulate Chief McQuiston. That concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other staff updates, David?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to take the opportunity to recognize one of my staff members. If you've had the opportunity to see, you'll see that the cubicle walls are up on both the 2nd and the 3rd floor, and I think they look great, and I think so far staff is very pleased with them. I want to thank the council for approving those CARES Act funds to use to purchase those. I just want to publicly recognize my building inspector, Jason Stockinger, who graciously volunteered to install them all for all of our employees after the county said that they would not. Spent many hours of his time last week in between inspections and doing other work to install them, and I think he did a great job, and so I just want to publicly praise him and thank him for that.
Thank you, David. Any other staff reports? Okay, that moves us to the mayor's report.
Oh, just a couple things to report. One, Halloween obviously happened, and my first Halloween in North Brainerd. I'm technically a resident of North, one block in from Northeast, still a Northeastern, but it was a lot of fun. Took the little ones around. Obviously, it was a down year because of COVID, but I was really surprised to see people with masks and the ingenuity of the residents and how they were handing out candy. Kelly Bevins included. Awesome job. A lot of slides, a lot of different shoots for distributing candy. And I don't know if you saw this or not. I know Paul Sandy saw it. Rapunzel decided to let her hair down. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but it was pretty impressive. And on that windy day, it was blowing. So I don't know. She's got some pretty sturdy hair, and it was obviously very well attached to her head. So end of report.
Thank you, Mayor. That'll bring us to council member reports. Jan?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Tad.
maybe, okay.
Can't renege, no.
You change your mind, Jan?
I just was gonna let the council know that Wednesday we are going to have, from our rental maintenance code committee, we're gonna look through the changes to make sure everything's, where we want it. So that is on Wednesday. Hopefully we'll get it to, Joe by the end of this month. And Dave. So, thanks.
Thank you, Tad.
Really brief update, Fire Advisory Board met a few weeks ago, 2% reduction in the assessment overall. Those funds will go into the capital fund. Next meeting scheduled, thanks for the briefing me, Chief Holmes. Next meeting is rescheduled out till February. And then Arboretum Board of Directors, only thing to report there, they've met last Thursday, the October 29th. Thanks to everybody who volunteered for the haunted trails and who attended. So great event. And then lastly, my daughter found Rapunzel's hair delightful. So, great touch. As did I.
I'm amazed that it's the first time she's let that hair down in 100 years. It's amazing.
Wayne?
Nothing.
Kelly?
Regarding Rapunzel, I just about drove south in the northbound lane after crossing over the island. Thanks. What the heck was that? I had to read about it in the paper to find out what it was. It was hilarious. We had 700 kids right across from Gregory Park, and probably the most amazing thing was the number of parents that said thank you. Thanks for handing out candy. Thanks for trying to make it normal. I was very impressed with that. And of course, the kids are always fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I've got two updates. I attended the park board meeting last week, and the mayor doesn't want to update us, but does look like they're moving forward with changing their programming from being in-house to working with community education and the YMCA to kind of get most of our youth sports programming out of the Parks Department, and that maybe as soon as next year. And then I just want to give a tip of the hat to Paul Sandy and the street department. The other morning I went to go get a cup of coffee and there was a collapsed brick right outside Kokomo, and I just texted Paul a picture and I'd say, I came back 2 hours later and it was already fixed. So it took you less than 2 hours to fix a sinkhole in the sidewalk downtown, and just right on top of it. Good job. Dave.
I'd just like to say tomorrow is a day worth celebrating. It's election day, and the transfer of power that's been a tradition in our country is something that we should be proud of and that we should support and do what we can. I'd like to remind people to please, please, please be kind to the people that are working at your polling stations. They do get paid, but not enough for what they're doing. And remember, just because you disagree with somebody, it doesn't mean you can't get along. And that's what has made us the nation that we have been. So be patient, be kind, and vote.
I did see the water tower, Mayor. It was cool. And I would just reiterate what Dave said. If you haven't voted already, please get out and vote and be cordial.
Thank you. With that, I'll take a motion to,
Close
we gotta do closed session first, huh?
No, we got to adjourn to.
Yeah, motion to adjourn to a closed session pursuant to Minnesota statutes 13D.03 to discuss labor. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Roll call vote. Roll call.
All right, Pritchett.
You bet.
Bevins. W. Erickson.
Yes.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunet.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.